Britain Yearly Meeting Trustees Annual Report and Financial Statements for 2017. It's not the most exciting of titles, is it? But don't be fooled, because this is about what we do as Quakers, the work we ask to be done on our behalf. And we're all part of it. I'm Ingrid Greenhow, Clerk of your Trustees, and if I'm a bit more wobbly than usual, I was a former student of Christopher Holdsworth's, and he is part of the reason I'm standing here today. And I'm so moved by what has just been read, so just give me a moment, friends. Up here with me for moral support are the Assistant Clerk, Caroline Nursey, whom you've just appointed as the Clerk of Trustees for next year, and Peter Ullathorne, the Yearly Meeting Treasurer. And I'd like to start with a quotation from an anonymous friend in Wensleydale and Swaledale, and I used this last year because I think it's just brilliant. I love to feel that I am part of the great Quaker movement and that I am supporting a great deal of work in the world which I'm not able to do myself. I feel valued for what I can do as part of the whole work. And a huge amount of work goes on in the Religious Society of Friends, by local meetings, by area meetings, by various Quaker groups, by individual friends, and of course the centrally managed work, the work of Britain Yearly Meeting. And it's the responsibility of your trustees to report to the Yearly Meeting on the £10 million of Quaker activity that happens centrally, the work that supports our charitable objects. And you, of course, can keep up with what we're doing, not only by reading the annual review, which I have somewhere, this brown volume, Our Faith, Our Work, but you can keep up with our minutes on the Quaker website through your sufferings representatives who hear from us after every meeting, and not least through Quake, the new monthly e-newsletter for all Quakers in Britain. Sign up at www.quaker.org.uk/Quake. And we hope you'll take this review home to your meetings and bring this work alive to friends who aren't able to be here this weekend, because it's Quaker work, it's our work, and it's our witness. Looking at ourselves as Britain Yearly Meeting Trustees, we have identified the need for a multi-year strategic framework below the very high level Our Faith in the Future, but above the operational plan, and the lack of this at the moment makes prioritising difficult. We now feel the time is right to work on such a framework, given that we've got all the necessary infrastructure in place. We've got Our Faith in the Future, a comprehensive operational plan that tells us what is being done and when, strategies drawn up by Quaker Peace and Social Witness Central Committee and Quaker Life Central Committee, and a risk register. And this multi-year plan will need to be done in consultation with the committees and with Meeting for Sufferings. If it all sounds very heavy and management speakish, it's actually just a way to bring everything we do together and to make sure our work meets those aspirations in Our Faith in the Future and help us all set the priorities for the work. But of course, the problem with prioritisation in the Quaker context is that we can never be sure what's going to come up and how the Spirit may move us. And it's very hard to plan and budget for the workings of the Spirit. But what I do hope is that the multi-year strategic plan won't take multi-years to complete. There is so much that needs to be done, friends, and resources, both human and financial, are not infinite. Last year, Yearly Meeting in Minute 38 said, "We have heard the call to examine our own diversity, particularly in our committee and organisational structure, locally and nationally." There's so much I'd like to tell you about, but in this report, I want to focus specifically on how we're responding to that call for greater diversity and inclusivity in Britain Yearly Meeting. You will all be aware, I hope, of the Sanctuary Everywhere project asked for by many area meetings and by Meeting for Sufferings. This is a legacy-funded project now in the implementation phase, shaped through consulting friends across the country about what sort of project they wanted to address the concern about the treatment of asylum seekers. And so far, 66 meetings have decided to become sanctuary meetings, and that number is rising. Quaker Peace and Social Witness Central Committee has appointed to its new Social Justice Subcommittee, which is overseeing this programme, plus the Crime, Community and Justice programme, several people with knowledge gained by lived experience of the British immigration system, and not all of them are friends, because we need that lived experience to help us with our discernment. And legacy funding is also enabling us to advertise a one-year post as an inclusion and diversity project coordinator. Friends House continues to be an exemplar of working towards diversity and inclusion. In 2017, we started offering work placements to ex-offenders. They are given the opportunity to learn, further their skills, or simply go back to work after a long period of time out of employment. They work in the Friends House restaurant and on the cleaning and facilities team. Most of them have successfully completed their work placement and received a certificate of achievement, and at least one has gone on to employment with us. The suspended soup scheme, which is not a plate juggling exercise, whatever you might think, is a scheme whereby you can buy a bowl of soup in the Quaker Centre to be given to someone in need, and that has really taken off. And quite simply, the care shown by our hospitality staff to people in need when they come into Friends House, treating even the most challenging with kindness and dignity. But what about diversity in our governance? At Trustees, we looked at the 3 questions posed by Meeting for Sufferings. In what ways is your committee diverse? In what ways could it be more diverse? And what could it help it become more diverse? Could I just ask Britain Yearly Meeting Trustees to stand up? Now, take a good look, friends. They're not very diverse. They're lovely, but they're not very diverse. Sit down. But I have to say we're a bit better than we used to be. We do okay on gender and geographical spread. We do extremely badly on ethnicity. We note now that half of us are still in paid work, and that's a big change from when I started as a trustee, when only 2 of us were working, and our average age has come down somewhat, and I can assure you we are very diverse in our quirkiness. At a recent trustees meeting, we invited Thomas Lawson, the CEO of LEAP Confronting Conflict, to talk to us about taking over as CEO with a board of trustees that was overwhelmingly white, male, and educated middle class. So exactly the people who haven't experienced and benefited from the LEAP programme. And Thomas was determined to change that, and we heard from Peter Ullathorne, a young black trustee, who spoke about growing up in a single-parent family in Hackney and his life-changing experience of LEAP. And between us, they told us of the benefits and challenges of having greater diversity on their trustee board. And last year, I attended a seminar on board diversity with Sandy Nairn of the National Trust, like us, a membership-led organisation, although on a somewhat larger scale and with more tea rooms. They were concerned that the National Trust appeared mostly to appeal to the over-60s white middle class. Sound familiar? So their board launched a number of initiatives to broaden the appeal of the National Trust. And what was the result? Even more over-60s. And why? Because the board was overwhelmingly over 60 white middle class and could only respond to what it knew. I'll come back to them in a minute. We've also spent time with Young Friends General Meeting and the Engaging Young Adult Quakers group, which has been running for about 9 months or so and aims to nurture young adult Quakers to benefit the whole Quaker community. And Younger Friends told us that at present only some 15 of the 400 places on the BYM committee structure are occupied by the under 35s. Think about it. And they asked us for 3 trustees under the age of 35 by 2020. Now, this is going to mean change, and we need to change to enable this to happen. We are very aware that the way we work is the result of current trustees being available for this amount of time. If we weren't able to give this much time, we'd have to change the way we do things. All of us on Britain Yearly Meeting Trustees are either retired or in jobs that enable us to work flexibly and to take leave to attend meetings. And I'm enormously grateful to those who do give up their time and are able to give up their time to serve the society. But what about those who can't, whose lives don't permit that flexibility for whatever reason? The Key Stage 3 maths teacher. Oh, could I have 4 Fridays off a year to go to London? It's not likely to happen. The answer is, if we are to be a Quaker community where all are heard, valued and supported, and everyone's contribution is accepted according to their gifts and resources, and all are welcome and included, we need to change our ways of working to enable all friends to play their part. It's not what we do, it's the way we've got used to doing it. And we need to start with what we have got, younger friends keen and willing to be involved. After all, whoever heard of George Fox and the Valiant Over 60s? And as trustees, we have made a commitment to help make this happen, and soon. We were asked to have those 3 trustees under the age of 35 by 2020. Well, actually, you've just appointed 2 of them under the age of 25 to take up service in January, and so we've made a start. And I hope this is the only time they will be distinguished by their age, because they will be full yearly meeting trustees, not interns or part-timers or job sharers or deemed to be in need of special help. And I'm sure they will tell us where we need to change to make this work. And I wonder what you were doing at 25. I was in Norway running courses for UNESCO on wood conservation. I didn't speak much Norwegian and I knew nothing about wood conservation. I do now. It didn't stop me. My father, at the age of 24, was making his way home from India after the war and ended up in charge of the fire brigade in Venice. Very unlikely for a very impractical man. He did it. We can all do it. But only by involving younger friends fully will we move away from hiding behind that great Quaker cliche. Or is it a death wish? Or is it a self-fulfilling prophecy? Oh, we're all grey-haired, middle class and retired. We're not. And my great hope is that we are at the start of demolishing number 1 on the trustees' risk register, ageing and declining membership, to replace it with a growing and flourishing membership that does not treat younger friends as something other, not as the future, but as the now. There are younger friends out there, but they shouldn't be out there. They should be in here. And how many of us will be willing to stand aside from our position at the clerk's table, on sufferings, on central committees, or on Britain Yearly Meeting trustees to make way for younger friends now? I admit I would find it very hard to stand down as clerk of Britain Yearly Meeting trustees, but if I stand by our commitment to inclusivity, then I need to be prepared to do that willingly and gladly. We must be prepared to give way, to not be reappointed, and for heaven's sake to stop recycling ourselves. Now that the National Trust is starting to change, the changes are being welcomed by younger and more diverse members, and are being greeted with dismay by the old guard who are saying, we don't want it to change, we like it the way it is. I hope, friends, over this weekend we have seen the need for change, not for change's sake, but so that we can indeed become loving, inclusive and all-age communities, able and supported individually and collectively to bring about a fairer and better world. Let's not be the old guard clinging on to outmoded ways of doing things. I've now lost my page. Back in 2011, Yearly Meeting noted the society is overgoverned, and what have we done about it? And at our last meeting for sufferings, it was minuted, we need to explore what it is about our structures that makes it difficult to make the progress we would like to see. And at our trustees training day recently, our facilitator, who wasn't a friend, but had certainly done his homework, wondered how we got anything done at all. He likened us to a bumblebee. According to the laws of aerodynamics, a bumblebee shouldn't be able to fly at all. But somehow it does. Is that us? Is it time to stop bumbling? Is it time to change and be changed? Is it time to transform and be transformed?
Good morning, friends. I hope all friends have had a chance to have a look at these financial statements. I commend them. They have a wonderful range of information on all the work that BYM has undertaken on your behalf and the superb activities which, as we heard, were demonstrated at on Friday afternoon here. And I hope you find these accounts useful in that respect, as well as, of course, the company annual review and Our Faith, Our Work, which Ingrid has already referred to. One area where you might reasonably express some surprise is the increase in the value of our properties. While we think of Friends House as a wonderful place of worship and a base for action, in the business world it has a valuation based on market prices, which have shot up remarkably. Together with Drayton House next door, which is leased out to University College to provide an income flow, the regular revaluation by our independent consultants has thrown up a surplus over book value of some 19 million. And this has been taken into reserves. I welcome this. It represents the culmination of so much work put in over the last 10 years to make the buildings fit for the 21st century, including significant improvements in sustainable facilities, and to exercise prudent stewardship of our resources. But of course, does not represent money you can spend, because that would destroy this wonderful resource we've put in to support our work. 2017 has been a good year in that we've spent over 9 million on the work we're charged with, roughly 3 million on Witness Through Action, 3 million on supporting friends and meetings, and 3 million on promoting Quakerism and sustaining the church and faith. This includes work which has been enabled by legacies. Once again, we were able to allocate an additional £500,000 to future projects, and the legacy income in 2017 at 3.3 million should enable us to allocate further funds this year to innovative and necessary projects. Yearly meeting gathering at Warwick last year meant additional work for the staff, and this was accomplished very successfully and within a budget. The income from the hospitality company hit a new high, and I've already commended the annual review, which shows what good work they're doing in running an ethical and sustainable business. Its contribution in both taking care of the running of Friends House and generating a significant profit to support our central work, nearly £1 million, is invaluable. Our investment portfolio had a good year, contributing some £750,000 income, but also recording a valuation increase of some £3 million. That, of course, is a snapshot as at 31st December, and is held to sustain the real value of our reserves. We've not reduced our portfolio during the year, although we have increased the proportion invested in sustainable activities. Trustees are currently working on a complete review of our investment policy to ensure that our ethical standards are duly reflected in the investment practice. The overall result has meant that trustees are looking at reserves more closely, and on pages 16 and 17 you will see a detailed explanation of why we hold these reserves, where we think we should be reviewing the balances held, and where we think additional investment might be required. You may have noticed that I haven't mentioned Friends' contributions to the work. Once again, the figure is relatively static at just over 2 million. I do hear the response that with all our reserves, there are other needier causes Friends want to support. But this is your church, and this is work that you want done, and the support that you give is so important in giving validity and vigour to this work. On a personal note, this is the 6th and final time that I will be presenting the accounts to yearly meeting. You've appointed a new treasurer from next January, and I look forward to working with her over the next few months to ensure a smooth handover. I'd like to say that this service, for me, has been a great joy. I've enjoyed working with so many good people on such a worthwhile enterprise, and I've had a lot of fun, as well as wonderful spiritual friendship from colleagues. I hope that my successor has as satisfying an experience as I've had. Thank you for allowing me to offer this service.
I just want to talk briefly about giving and fundraising. And as you've heard, our finances are healthy thanks to good stewardship and the record contribution by the Friends House Hospitality Company. The company's trading income funds the bulk of the running costs for Friends House and Swarthmore Hall, and after paying these and its operating costs, a surplus of 965,000, I never read numbers, was available as a contribution towards our charitable work. This is the highest figure achieved in the company's history. And what this means, friends, is that the 2.2 million that you give all goes on Quaker work. Thank you. So it's going to sound a bit mealy-mouthed then when I tell you as trustees we've been spending time looking at giving and fundraising and how to encourage long-term sustainable giving by Friends to enable and extend the work done on your behalf. I've come to realise that over the years we've been very good at telling you about what we have achieved, but not so good about telling you what more we could do. We could do so much more, and so much more needs to be done. And legacy-funded projects are enabling us to do more in the short term, exciting new work that addresses what Friends have asked for in our faith in the future, strengthening work with children and young people, property support for meetings, engaging young adult Quakers, Sanctuary Everywhere, and the Peace Education Engagement Project are just some of those legacy-funded, time-limited projects. Your giving could enable us to do the long term, to turn these vital pieces of work into core work. Just one example, we recently agreed to appoint 2 youth workers, one in Bristol Bath and one in Yorkshire. It's an experiment, but if it works, we know that at least another 15 area meetings have expressed an interest in having youth workers, and we don't have the resources to meet that kind of need. So how much do we need? Well, as much as you can give, dear friends. And there are many ways of looking at this. Another £1 million to make 3 million in total would be wonderful, as our Treasurer has kept on reminding us. Some of you asked us for a figure for individual giving, and apparently if you divide 3 million by the number of members, you come up with the magic figure of £225. Don't try and do it in your head, it does work. But the problem with that figure, or any figure, is that some of us will be thinking, oh, is that all? I can cut down on what I give. And others will be thinking, I can't afford that. I'll just give up on giving. I'm thinking of the friend who has to go to the food bank. And I've now lost another page, but it's here. I really want to talk to you about the idea of giving with equal generosity. In a previous existence, I was chair of governors at a girls' grammar school in Leafy, Buckinghamshire, and we decided we wanted to raise 1.25 million for a new sixth form building. So you divide the number of families by the number of, by the figure of 1.25, and you came up with £1,000 per family. Actually, if you think £1 a day, you could do it in 3 years, but it doesn't work like that. So we talked about giving with equal generosity, and this meant that our most wealthy giver was able to give us £100,000. But the giving that meant the most to me was the woman who rang up and said, I'm a single parent, I'm a cleaner in the local hospital, I don't have any money, I can give you £5 a month for 5 years. That's giving with equal generosity, friends. So let's give joyfully, with equal generosity and with love, to bring about a peace, just and sustainable world. Finally, I want to take the opportunity to thank everyone who contributes to the amazing work done on behalf of Friends. Our staff here at Swarthmore Hall and out in the field who work their socks off. Everybody from the staff who've won a Platinum Award for Clean Loos to our recording clerk who was on the Today programme at some ungodly hour this morning. But also our committee members, members of Sufferings, our Central Nominations Committee who have found us younger trustees, our trustees, volunteers and you, dear friends, who give your time, your money and your support to this wonderful bumblebee that is Britain Yearly Meeting. This is my last year as clerk of your trustees. Thanks to you, it has been and remains exhilarating, scary, rewarding, and a real privilege. Thank you.